So I'm going to build the staff car. This is the US Army staff car on 1:48 scale. This is for the On30 narrow gauge. Let's move that little sprue out of the way. So basically it says here in the instructions, assemble the parts and prime them and then paint them in a kind of off beige colour and then do all your weathering. Then add the cow catcher at the front before we move on to complete it like so. So what I have done is I've obviously got the kit here that you have to buy for it, and I've taken the essential parts out, which is, stick that on. So we have the bonnet, put the front grille in, drilled a couple of holes using my God hand drills. These are really good. You just basically twist them and it eats through any sort of plastic. Now I just need to figure out a way of removing this excess because this is metal or brass or whatever it is, so I need to figure out a way of cutting this off a tool sharp enough to remove it. And then what I'm going to do is they mentioned the fact that they put some lenses in here, so you can see them there, little tubes behind the lenses for the headlights, so you could actually wire some lights on here so it actually is working lights. And obviously that's kind of showing you the finished picture of how to assemble, so I need to get some little metal rod. They say brass rod. I've got some metal rod that I can use for that to actually as supports on the car. And then all the bits for it are in here. So we have the alternate chassis that the motor attached to, and then we have all the parts in here. So we have the Mishima flat can motor there, and we've got all the wiring, and we've got the drive wheels with the gear, and then we also have the front pony truck, and we've got wiper blades and all that in there to supply the electrical contact from the rails to the motor. So yeah, I'm going to start assembling this as a little project, because just now there's kind of that much going on in life that I don't have much time to maybe focus on certain things to do with the layouts and dedicate a lot of hours into it. So I've decided to put a little model kit as a side project and get this up and running, and it runs on HO00 gauge track, 16.5mm I believe. So ideal, perfect, looking forward to getting into this. So all I need to do is figure out a way of removing this, paint that, make the little support rods, put the chassis in it with the pony truck, and then adjust the height of the cow catcher, because obviously that's too low down. That would ride on the rails as it stands, if we put it that way. There we go. Sorry for the handheld camera work, but yeah, you can see there, it's just it's down too far, so it'll need to be angled out a lot further. And I look forward to doing this as a little project. So I'll get back to you soon. So I borrowed the idea of the sun visor that the chaps put on. I've come up with kind of my version of a sun visor with a little centre pole holding it up, which does the part. Once we get some paint on there and blend it all in, it should look okay. But I've also went with an idea of putting a roof rack on it. So I've marked out the holes, put little pins in that help support that roof rack where it is, and keep it level, just above, about there. Just used some offcuts, used a bit of this from the bridge build of the Angel's Share Whisky Distillery. Just cut that into strips and super glued that on there. Made that frame out of some angled styrene, 90-degree angled styrene. Wanted to look a bit kind of rough and tumble, not like it's came through the factory or anything to do with this, that the people that have converted this into a rail car have also added this, and that's where I'm going to put some other goodies, maybe some oil cans and some bits and bobs for a car that travelling on the rails in case it stops or needs any sort of top up of fuel or anything. I've got a little bell mounted in there as well, still to attach the wire to the driver, and build the chassis, but I'm trying to get all the bodywork done. Everything needs to be done first prior to hitting it with the first coat of primer. So yeah, it's coming along. I also purchased this Tamiya Military Miniature Series jerry can set at 1:48 scale. It's obviously got the kind of the barrels and the jerry cans and some packs and other materials that you would put on tank destroyers or tanks. So what I decided to do was to take 4 of the jerry cans, quite easy to assemble, the little handles, put them together. Obviously a rolled up blanket, a bag full of stuff and a bucket. So kind of put that together, finished off the roof rack, put some rails on the side. I will put some little strapping across it to help it look a little bit more realistic. So I've set up for a little bit of spray painting. I'm going to spray this in this JN Grey as a primer, and then I'll use some, thinking of maybe using a little bit of, where is it? There's the colour of the car. Just thinking of using this wooden deck tan, which is kind of close to the colour of the car in the picture, which I quite like. So I'm going to emulate that and use the wooden deck tan. This is a little yellower on that, but I reckon we'll get away with this and a little bit of weathering, and I do like that rather than the olive green. So let's get the next stages done. We already have a little bit of accessories, 4 fuel cans, jerry cans, a little bag, sleeping bag, another bag, blanket, bucket. So yeah, these will get put on the roof rack, which is now been painted that same grey colour. So certainly coming together. The wooden deck tan colour on, and then start kind of aging and weathering it before we put the glass in, and then I'll go about actually assembling the chassis and the motor and see if we can get this thing running. So for me to cut off this little piece of metal slag that was attached to the cow catcher, I had to buy myself a little jeweler's saw with some of the little fine blades that are designed for cutting through this sort of stuff. So I've only used one blade and it's done the job. It's a little bit bent, I probably could straighten it again using this thing up here and extending it this way, but it's done the job. Absolutely no time at all. It's taken that bit off. You can see there, that's it through. Just need to give it a little buff with a file to smooth it off. That's the snowplough kind of ready to get attached to the car when we get to that stage, which is ready for its next stage of paintwork, which is doing the bumpers, doing the bell handle, and well, the bell support and the bell itself, and the rear bumper, and get some weathering done on it. I used a metallic gunmetal for the grille and the bumpers front and rear, and then I weathered it up using some pastels and some acrylics as well, and I think it's gave it a nice little finish. Used a sponge to dab on some of the rust tones, some of the dark earth tones, and then I used a little bit of the weathering powders, the pigments, some soot, just to dust up the body panels and the roof. So yeah, it's coming together, certainly looking the part. Some more finishing touches to go still. I painted up the roof rack, made it look aged and weathered as though it was metal, and I've also painted up the cow catcher and attached that to the front by snipping parts of the bumper away. I added the jerry cans, the bags and the bucket and all that to the roof rack, so I'm very happy with how it looks overall, quite prototypical. So here we are on to the assembly of the chassis, motor and gears and whatnot. So this is the front pony truck. These are the wiper blades, so that goes in that slot there. And then the wiper blades extend across, so obviously we trim them down, and then that one is for that side. That screw there goes through the centre of the pony truck into here. The wires get fed through that hole all the way to where the flat can motor goes. That attaches under there with the worm screw to drive the gear, and then we have this brass rod which will help attach the cow catcher and support it to the car, and we get this figure with it. So I've had to do a little notch in the seat here in order to let the cables pass through, because that's the front seat, so the cables will pass through there, and that's the hole in the back seat for where the flat can motor sits. So we'll get these wee parts together, see how that goes. Then we've got the wiring to do for the motor as well. Quite basic, to be honest, but still enough to be a challenge. You can see here that obviously the wires used as the wiper pickups on the pony trucks are really long. You trim them back obviously to suit, and the motor is now attached to the gear system, and I've done a little test fit with the body on it to see how it would look. I like the look of it. It's quite funky looking, unusual, and looking forward to completing the build. For me to fit the cow catcher accurately and where I can get the pins through the front grille, I had to actually remove parts of the bumper, and you can see now that the cow catcher fits nicely, and with a little file wedged underneath it shows you the clearance I'm going to need for it when it's on the track. While doing a dry fit of the motor and the seat, the shaft of the motor is actually colliding with the seat, so I cut a notch in the seat to make a gap where the drive shaft can spin freely without being restricted, and you can see it pokes up quite high, but once the little man's in there, you kind of hide that hole. So painted him up, painted the seat up, and gave him a steering wheel, even though it obviously doesn't steer, somewhere for him to rest his hands while he's cruising along the rails. There actually was a brass rod with the Backwoods Miniature kit, so I cut 2 lengths of it, drilled 1mm holes into the body panels and put them into place, then super glued it and painted them up to look like they belong obviously with the rest of the cow catcher. I then used some epoxy resin to fasten the motor to the chassis to keep it in place, as it were. I pushed the wires through the motor tags in order to do a little dry fit to see how it would work before I soldered anything in place. You can see the rear wiper blade here, and that touches the top of the wheel, and the wire runs from that onto the motor chassis. So now I've got the wires on the motor mount coming from the front pony truck, the live and the negative, and I've got the rear wiper installed as well, and that wire coming through. So a little quick test on the battery. That's off the pony truck, both wheels of the pony truck, and there as well. So we now have a live circuit and it working, so I'm going to solder these wires on finally in place, get the seat in with the little guy and attach the body, put the roof rack on, and that should be it, pretty much done. So the issue with the Tamiya Staff car and the Backwoods Miniature chassis and motor that I fitted, power's working as we saw with the battery, but when I turn it up now, it's just spinning. It's not actually engaging. So if I look under here, here's a question to my fellow YouTubers. So there you can see the drive shaft and the worm screw around about it, and then the gears. So they are engaged, but the issue is that when the motor drive shaft turns, it must just be spinning, and the gear has got nothing, again, as I said, holding it in place. Should I have something that I should be doing? Should that be glued on? Should it have some sort of fastening? Does anybody know the answer to that? What to put on the end, or how to hold that worm screw in place in order to drive the gears? So yeah, answers in the postcard, much appreciated. So far it looks cool, looks really good, very happy with it. It's turned out really good. I really like it. It's ideal. It's what I had in my mind's eye when I saw the original pictures. I wanted to kind of recreate my own version of it. So yeah, I would say it's a 90% success. We just need to get the final 10% sorted and get it running. My solution was to make it a wagon load. So to do so, I got some double O gauge track to put on the bed of the flat wagon, or the stake wagon, and I cut out some ties from it, some of the sleepers, and basically spread the spacing of them to make it look a bit more scale, prototypical for narrow gauge, and a little bit of super glue kind of held it all in place. Then I got some paints out and painted sleepers, and weathered the rails as well, and used some powder pigments just to kind of make it look a bit older, because the wagon itself is weathered, and put the track on the wagon and put the rail car on the track. So it makes it a load. It actually looks quite cool, and we're just going to go with it. It's been transported to a location where it will then be used in that area. So here's some running shots of it. This is my Bachmann Baldwin locomotive, the 262, and World War I grey, the USA on the side of it. I'm probably going to rename it, and a couple of the state wagons with the US Army staff car turned into a rail car cruising on the back of it. So very happy with how that looks. It's a little tweak on what I'm doing until I get a solution to make the rail car run itself properly. So thanks again for tuning in to this latest update on the Tamiya Staff car and Backwoods Miniatures chassis build. Turned out pretty cool looking, still final touches to do, but I'll do that once I find a solution to the worm drive gear and the drive shaft and how to secure them. And when I do, I'll update the channel as soon as possible. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.